Hey everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Heather, and I'm a classical homeopath and author of the Sunlight RX. Today I want to take a few minutes to talk with you about homeopathic constitutions, and I'm specifically going to talk about the sulfur constitution. I thought it was very appropriate because I just got done working in the garden, handling dirt and manure, and I'm not sure if you can see, but my shirt is kind of a mess. My hair is all in shambles. This is a classic, some hallmarks of the sulfur type, the sulfur constitution. But before I dive into that particular constitution, I want to take a few minutes here to talk about we need to dissolve a myth here in homeopathy um, with regard to constitutional types. So many homeopaths and many people who actually teach homeopathy teach their students that everybody has a constitutional type, meaning there's 2,000 plus different homeopathic remedies. So those practicing homeopathy who believe in the constitutional typing say, hey, if we can figure out this person's constitutional type, boom, that's it. We've got it. We've got their case. They're going to be healed. And that's basically it, right? End of story. The healing is done, and that's it. I wish it were as simple as that, but it's not. So we need to understand that while everybody has an upper layer that they present with, whether that's a sulfur layer, a pulsatilla layer, a natmer layer, an arsenicum album layer, a phosphorus layer, etc. Once that layer is cleared, another layer will come up to the surface. And oftentimes, if we're treating a chronic condition, it can take 9 months to a year after giving a remedy for the next layer to actually come to the surface. It's not an overnight process. And this is why. One reason we have so many constitutional layers is because we have been introduced to so many suppressive therapies over the course of our life, and our parents over the course of their life, and their parents over the course of their life. And over time, what happens is we develop layers. So let's say, for example, you're a kid, you have eczema, your parents are freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. She's so cranky, she's so itchy, I can't calm her down. What do we do? I can't take it anymore. They take her to the doctor. They give her some sort of, steroid cream. They put the cream and the ointment on, and boom, the eczema clears up. But then what happens is another condition starts. Because we suppress the eczema, another condition comes up. That condition can be colic or moodiness or depression or constipation. It literally can be anything depending on your genetic predisposition. Over time, what happens is whenever we have an ailment come up, whether it's acute or chronic, and we use a suppressive therapy to treat that issue, what happens is our body starts to develop layers. And I talk about suppressive therapies a lot on my podcast, The Primal Pioneer. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. But just briefly here, suppressive therapies are literally anything that suppresses the immune system. So we have a lot of examples of those. We have antibiotics, we have vaccinations, we have steroid creams, we have oral steroids, right? We have any kind of prescription medication, from Klonopin to antidepressants to thyroid medication, etc. Basically every medication that the Western world has to offer suppresses the immune system, and in turn, that symptom is either lessened or magically goes away. But then what happens is a new symptom develops because we haven't actually addressed the root cause of, hey, what was causing the ear infection, or what was causing the thyroid imbalance, or what was causing the obesity, or what was causing the colitis, right? So over time, we develop these layers, and those layers develop as a result of genetic predisposition as a result of exposure to suppressive therapies and as a result of suppressing your emotions, or learning, through your parents and observing your parents and the people around you, how they express their emotions, or most of the time suppress their emotions or act out in a pretty harmful way. So I really want to clear the air around this topic, because so many people are like, oh, I'm going to go for a constitutional homeopathy session, and this person, once they find out what my constitution is and I get my remedy, then boom, I'm going to be good for the rest of my life. It just doesn't work that way, especially at this time, because we've been exposed to so many suppressive therapies, okay, from birth, and even now preconception, because our parents have been vaccinated, because our parents have had suppressive therapies, because their parents have had suppressive therapies. Even back in the day, in the 1800s, when syphilis was more rampant, what did they do? They used mercury. They literally injected people with mercury. That's a suppressive therapy. And so since those therapies, the suppressive therapies, have been introduced, it affects each preceding generation, and weakens that generation more and more over time. Same thing is true with vaccinations, with antibiotics, and the more of these things we get, the weaker our organism becomes, the weaker we become as a species. So one thing I love about homeopathy is that it has this innate ability to start to gradually, over time, this is not an overnight process. This is not like some magic medicine. Magic medicine doesn't exist. Homeopathy gradually over time removes the effects of suppressive therapies. Okay, so all the antibiotics you've had, all the cream you've put on your antibiotic cream you've put on your face to help clear acne. That was me as a kid. All the antibiotics you took for strep throat as a kid. All the UTIs you've suppressed with some sort of antibiotics, right, etc. We can go on and on here. But when you work with a homeopath, or a well-trained homeopath, we can use homeopathy, and this is how I use it in my practice primarily, to remove the effects of suppressive therapies, because that is the number one reason why we are so sick today. Yeah, sure, diet plays a big part, and believe me, I'm a chef, and I'm a cook, and I'm a gardener, and I grow my own food, and we raise our own animals. Nutrition's huge. It's a huge part of my life. It's not the whole story. Suppressive therapies have a much bigger impact on our health than many other things that we're exposed to in our environment. And we always hear, hey, grandpa lived to be 100 and grandma lived to be 101 and this woman lived to be 120, and they're like, oh, it's because they drank a glass of wine a day or did this or that. The reason why they lived so long is because they didn't have any vaccinations. They didn't have the exposure to suppressive therapies that we have today. Let's transition into the sulfur type, because I'm rocking the sulfur type here today. My hair is in shambles. If you could see my shirt, there's dirt everywhere. I've just had my hands in the earth and in the dirt and in manure planting garden. I was just planting jalapenos outside in my garden. And I said, I'm rocking the sulfur constitution right now. I have to come in and talk about this. So in homeopathy, we always have to start by treating the upper layer. You can't treat something that happened as a kid and expect that to be rectified unless it's on the upper layer. That's just not how it's not how to practice homeopathy. It's not playing to its strengths. That's not going to work. And a lot of people, I tried homeopathy and it doesn't work. Well, you likely didn't use it or the homeopath didn't use it in the correct way. And a lot of homeopaths are not trained correctly today. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of training or accreditation needed for somebody to say, hey, hang up a shingle and I'm a homeopath, right? So fortunately, I've had a very long, long education, and also teach homeopathy. Now I have a 1.5-year practitioner training program. You can read more about that on my site, heathershepard.com, heatharshepard.com. And if you are interested in becoming a classically trained homeopath, I have a 1.5-year program that I start every September. Okay, that was a side note. Let's talk about the sulfur constitution. And again, it has to be the upper layer. If you see some sulfur in a person, but their upper constitution is Natmer, and you give sulfur, it's not going to work. It's not going to do much but agitate the system. Okay, so a sulfur constitution, and this is somebody who, I'm just going to backtrack for a second. every person has a way they express themselves, okay? Um, some people have very strong emotions. Some people's emotions are very shut down. Some people have a very outward sexual expression. Some people have a more inner, more secretive sexual expression. Some people are very outgoing. Some other people are very introverted. Some are very loquacious, talkative. Other people are more shy and timid. Some people are super anxious about their health. Other people could give two shits about their health, right? It's like there are different ways that we all express ourselves. And so we can use the homeopathic constitutional typing to say, hey, how is this person expressing themselves? And has it gone to a pathological side? Because somebody can have a very healthy expression, and we don't want to treat that. If somebody's healthy, if they're expressing themselves in a healthy sulfur way, great, amazing, we don't need to treat that. But it's when we see the pathology that we want to go in and quote unquote treat that using homeopathy. So the sulfur type presents as they can be very egotistical. They can be very outspoken, they're going to share their opinion with you, and they like to have theories. Okay, there are theories, so they'll come and they'll tell you that this works because of this and that goes this way because of this. And usually, they have something like their hair's like, all in shambles, like, kind of like mine is today, their hair, but it can even be worse than this, okay? This is playing it down for a sulfur type if you're looking at me. But their hair can be like all in shambles, and their shirt is like, maybe they have half of their shirt tucked in and the other half is out. Maybe they have a very strong scent coming from them. Sulfur constitution is known to be pretty smelly, so their stool's offensive, their sweat and perspiration is offensive, their breath can be offensive. Just they have this general offensiveness to their smells. They're if they have belching or flatulence, it's offensive. And so if somebody, so we're getting into some pathologies here, right? If they come in, they have all these offensive smells. Their personality is way too egotistical. It's way too much. They can't hear anybody else. It's all about them, right? And so you start to pick up on these sort of subtleties when you're in a session with somebody. When I'm in a session with a client, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the subtleties. I'm not looking for, hey, what is your red blood cell count? Doesn't matter too much when we're actually trying to help somebody get better. Sure, I take lab work into consideration and I teach my students how to do that. But if we're really trying to get to the root of something, the lab work is not going to help us get to the root of anything. Maybe it'll take a snapshot of what actually was happening when the minute you got your blood drawn, right? It's really not. We place far too much emphasis on things that don't matter and not enough emphasis on things that actually do matter. For the sulfur person, I want to know, do you have to eat around 11 a.m. or noon? Yeah, I do. I have to eat that time where I get cranky or I get really tired, or that's very much a sulfur thing. When you wake up in the morning, do you have a bowel movement? Yeah, immediately have a bowel movement, have an urge to go. Sometimes it's diarrhea, it's really offensive. Totally sulfur, extremely sulfur. And you can notice a sulfur from a mile away. They're dirty, okay? Their clothes are dirty. They don't like to bathe, and they're sloppy, right? Maybe some of their lunch is still on their shirt. Maybe their flies down. Their shirt's half in, half out. Their hair's a mess, and they tend to be very outspoken, very strong personality. And they often have this aversion to eggs, their fear of heights, and they're very concerned about their family members, okay? They have high anxiety about their family or their kids. They have anxiety about, hey, are they going to be okay? I have to check in about them. They worry about them. That's a high anxiety for a sulfur type. So we can go through literally every single remedy, and every single remedy is going to have some sort of personality, of characteristics to it. And this is what we call constitutional typing. So we have to understand, however, let's say somebody comes into my practice and they're a sulfur type. I can tell it a mile away usually, okay? And as soon as they say their body odors, they're aggravated by heat, they sleep with their feet out of the covers because sulfur gets so aggravated by heat that when they sleep at night, they have minimal covers. Maybe they're sleeping naked and they stick their feet out of their covers. They stick their feet out of the covers because they're trying, the big toe helps to regulate body temperature. And so they stick their feet out of the covers, and people are always like, I came in for colitis. Why are you asking me if I stick my feet out of the covers? This is what I'm talking about. We've been trained to focus on things with regard to our health, with regard to lifestyle too, but with regard to our health, that don't matter. What's your red blood cell count? What's your BUN? You know, what's your cholesterol levels? These things matter very little and tell us very little about what's really going on in the organism, what's the root cause of their issue, what's the genetic predisposition, and how to really rectify these things. Most people throw supplements and genetic testing and all sorts of nonsense and expensive things at our ailments, and it's just not helpful. It's not helpful. I know from personal experience. I know from working with clients for going on 13, 14 years now. It's literally not helpful. Sure, it can help a little bit here and there, but it's not going to help us in the end. It's not going to help us get to the end goal, which is improving your quality of life and setting you up to lead the healthiest, most vital, longest life you possibly can. So if you are studying homeopathy, or maybe you're just kind of in search of looking for a homeopath to work with, this is a red flag. If you come across a homeopath who says, I'm a constitutional homeopath, we're going to figure out your remedy, and boom, that's it. You're out the door. Maybe, you'll come back for a cold or a flu. That's not how this works, okay? We're going to clear the upper layer. Maybe it's sulfur, maybe it's another remedy, but after we clear that layer, another layer is going to come to the surface. And it's usually going to be that layer that comes to the surface is something old you've already experienced that's been suppressed. So for me, I'll end here with a personal example. So for me, I had a kidney infection in college. Boom, flat out gave me antibiotics. Well, kidney infection went away. But did it really go away? Because after the kidney infection, then I struggled with anxiety. I used homeopathy to heal my anxiety. And so as I'm healing the anxiety over the years, what comes up is, hey, here comes this kidney infection resurfacing. Is it as bad or as intense as I had as in college? No, but here it is. That's one of the best signs you can get if you when you're healing your body, is if an old symptom returns, you know that your immune system is moving out of a suppressed place. So that's a little bit about constitutional typing, homeopathy, suppressive therapies. You can learn more about me again on my site, heathershepherd.com, and you can follow me on Instagram, sunlight_rx, and you can tune into my weekly podcast, The Primal Pioneer. If you're interested in studying homeopathy, go to my site, heathershepherd.com, go to the homeopathy tab, and you'll see the practitioner training course. And you can read more about it and apply there. See you next time.